What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here. Today, Bungie released hotfix 3.2.0.2. In it, they announced they fixed some of their pinnacles as well as a few other things. I will have a video on the pinnacle changes in the coming days. However, they also mentioned that they nerfed every hunter's new favorite exotic, the Star Eater Scales. Or at least, it appears to be a nerf. In the patch notes, they state that they fixed an issue where Star Eater Scales was erroneously applying its damage bonus to weapons and grenades instead of supers as intended. So that is a flat out nerf, but it was a bug to begin with. The next line states that they increased the maximum number of stacks required for the full damage bonus from 4 stacks to 8 stacks. So again, it appears to be a massive nerf. But I did some testing, and before, the max stacks of 4 times Feast of Light gave a 60% damage buff to your super. This was best seen on Golden Gun, which I did a video breaking down all the numbers. So in this video, I am once again going to break down the Golden Gun numbers, as well as go over how the exotic now works after this hotfix. So the first thing you need to know is that the orbs you collect don't stack the same as before. You have to pick up 2 orbs to get 1 stack of Feast of Light. And once you pick up 8 orbs, you will get 4 stacks of Feast of Light. Hopefully Bungie changes this to show stacks 1 through 8 instead, because as I found out, the damage stacks incrementally. Meaning if you pick up 3 orbs, you will only show you have 1 stack of Feast of Light. However, you will actually have 1.5 stacks. And yes, this does make a difference. Another thing I tested is, do weapon orbs from a masterwork weapon count the same as super orbs? And the answer to that is yes, they do. To test this, I had my friends Pat and Steam join me on Venus. Steam popped a Well of Radiance and I picked up the 3 orbs. I then show I have 1 stack of Feast of Light. However, you actually have 1.5 stacks. I then had Pat pop a bubble. He had on Crest of Alpha Loopy, so it made 4 orbs. I picked them up and I show I am at Feast of Light times 3, but really I am at 3.5 times stacks. So I would just need 1 more orb to get Feast of Light times 4, which is actually times 8, as I will explain in a minute. I know this probably sounds very confusing, but let me try and clear things up by showing you how Feast of Light now stacks with Golden Gun. To demonstrate this, we first need a baseline for our damage. So I went to the Lost Sector on Nessus and popped a Golden Gun with no stacks of Feast of Light at all. I then hit crits for 51,273, 74,756, and 97,457, for a total damage output of 223,486. The rest of the Golden Gun clips will be showing each stack of Feast of Light from 1 through 8, so you can see how the damage of Feast of Light now stacks. I will have the damage buff and the total numbers on screen to make it easy to see. Enjoy. So that showcased all the stacks of Feast of Light you can get. To make sure, I went back in one more time and got 4 stacks of Feast of Light, and then I collected a few more orbs on top of that, just to make sure it doesn't go any higher. As was the case before, you can keep picking up orbs once you are maxed on stacks, but they do not go any higher than 4 stacks of Feast of Light. It would be nice if the game didn't allow you to collect more orbs so that you could save them on the ground. Basically, you could pop your super and then be able to get another one back if you were saving orbs with like Ursa Furiosa Titans for instance. But maybe this is by design. Anyways, 4 stacks is as high as you can go, which is 8 orbs collected. The boots used to stack up 15% more damage for every stack, and now, as you can see by the numbers I displayed, each stack goes up by 11.25%, going from 11.25% at 1 stack, or half a stack depending how you look at it, all the way to a 90% buff at 4 stacks, or 8 orbs picked up after your super. The previous max stacks gave you 60%. So in a sense, these boots actually got stronger, or at least they got a higher damage ceiling. They have a very high risk, high reward playstyle. It will be tougher to hit your max stacks of Feast of Light, but if you do, your damage output will be greater. However, if you die, you lose those stacks of light. So stack Feast of Light at your own risk, and don't miss your shots. The final thing for Golden Gun I wanted to showcase was the Knock 'em Down perk with a fully charged Golden Gun. This used to give a 30% damage buff on top of the Feast of Light buff. Now it is even stronger. For some reason, the Knock 'em Down buff gives a 95% damage buff when you have 4 stacks of Feast of Light. The 828,010 damage it deals is 370% more damage than the base Golden Gun with no Feast of Light and no Knock 'em Down perk. This is absolutely insane damage. Finally, I wanted to try out a couple more supers with the boots to answer some questions that you may be wondering. First was, how does it fare with Tether? The first thing I will show you is a top tree single shot Tether with no Feast of Light buff. Before Tether is applied, I hit 2570 to the body and 3854 to the head. I then cast Tether and hit 3340 to the body and 5010 to the head. Therefore, at base, this is a 30% debuff. I then shoot a Tether at the boss with 4 stacks of Feast of Light and hit 7,515 to the head and 5,010 to the body. This is a 95% debuff compared to shooting it with no Tether applied, and it is a 50% higher debuff than a base Tether, so it is still pretty strong. The next logical question was, does this buff other teammates' damage? Sadly, it does not. To test this, I had my boy Pat hop on Hunter, gather up 8 orbs for 4 stacks of Feast of Light, and then tether the boss. I could not get a crit as the boss was hiding his face, but you can see I am hitting 3340 to the body, which is the exact same body shot damage I hit with a base tether before. So a teammate's Feast of Light tether does not give an extra debuff to the other fire team members. Disappointing, but not unexpected. The last super I wanted to test was Mobius Quiver, the multi-shot tether. With no stacks of Feast of Light, I hit 74,486 damage with a crit while the boss was tethered. That's very good damage. I then go back in and collect 8 orbs and get a 4 stack of Feast of Light and cast the super again. This time it does a whopping 141,518 damage per crit shot while tethered. And you guessed it, that is a 90% damage buff. The same as 4 stacks of Feast of Light with the 3-shot Golden Gun. With this data, I figured it was not needed to test the other supers. I tested Arc Staff before the nerf, and the Star Eaters gave a 60% buff to all the Arc Staff supers, so there's no reason to assume it doesn't now give a 90% buff instead. Same applies to the Revenant, Silence, and Squall. So to recap, you still only get 4 stacks of Feast of Light on screen, however they stack halfway between as well. So you can pick up 3 orbs and essentially have 1.5 stacks of Feast of Light, and this would equate to a 33.75% damage buff to your super. And it goes all the way to 4 stacks of Feast of Light after 8 orbs collected, giving a 90% damage buff to your super. This does work with your own single shot tether, but not with teammates' tethers. Lastly, orbs from supers count the same as orbs from masterworked weapons. I hope all of this information helped you out. I know it sure helped me make more sense of the change. Let me know down in the comments if you like this change or if you hate it. Personally, after seeing the numbers, I think this is still a very strong exotic, and I will probably try running it in some GMs in the future. If this video helped you out, a like would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, thanks again to Steamop and Pegleg Pat for helping me gather the info I needed for the video. It is much appreciated. Take care, Guardians.